I think we'll have to do it again. Could you hear it?
What?
Could you hear the video?
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't hear it. Let's restart it.
Well, can you hear it now?
I can now. Yeah, so let's restart it.
All right. Here is we were talking about the network on the last show, and I found this clip isn't that long, about 3 minutes. But this is literally exactly what's going on now. So it's so wild.
I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street. There's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. So, I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. I want you to get up right now. Get up, go to your windows, open them, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. Things have got to change.
How many stations does this go
up? You've got to get mad.
67.
Say,
I know it goes to Louisville and Atlanta.
I'm not going to take this anymore. Then we'll figure out what to do about the depression and the inflation and the oil crisis. But first, get up out of your chairs, open the window, stick your head out and yell, and say, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
Who are you talking to, Herb?
CGG Atlanta.
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Herb?
Are they yelling in Atlanta, Ted? But first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say,
You know, it's so bizarre because when was Network? That was
76. 76.
76.
The
Dang.
inflation, the Russians, all the crime. Wow. Is that like just unbelievable?
I'm not trying to take this anymore. They're yelling and that.
I think save that, send that to me because I may put that on our little intro.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it's so weird because think about how long this has been going on. We talk about it, all the time.
Yeah.
And it's been going on for so long and people just they've been asleep for so long and we've got to wake people up so they'll start screaming, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore.
I think people are coming around, Jenny, just for the fact of I haven't really changed my, what I've said for a long time. If I said anything like we say now about the globalists and this and that and all these, even like depopulation, you said that 20 years ago when I was saying that, I was literally, people would look at me like, okay, Michael, you're on the crazy farm. Now you've got, it's not really that crazy anymore.
Yeah.
It's actual people are like, yeah, something is going on. There seems to be these powers that be in one way or another. So, just take some time. But I do think we are winning now. I think the tide is turning. We're winning. It's being exposed.
Well, I'm not sure about winning, but I mean, it is being exposed, and that's, sunshine is the best disinfectant. And if we can't start getting this stuff out, we're dead in the water because so many people don't know what's going on.
Well,
and it has to be up to us to bring it out because who else is going to?
Well, you're right about that. 100% true. But I'll give you another example. We've got Amber coming on today to talk about the voter rolls and the election integrity here in Oklahoma. What have we heard for years and years and years? Oklahoma, there is nothing wrong in Oklahoma, but now people are actually.
Oklahoma's okay.
Yeah. Oklahoma's okay. We have paper ballots, this and that. There is, we have the best in election integrity in the country, blah, blah, blah. But we know there's chinks now in the armor.
Yeah.
And people like Amber is just full steam ahead, exposing it, and especially to the right people, I think.
Yeah, and I want to make this point again. Stephanie says, I have emails.
Yeah.
Telling me all. And I know that made you feel better. I know, Stephanie, I get it. I do want to say one thing though, because and I've said it before, but I'm going to say it again. I honestly don't believe in so many cases that people are literally doing evil. I think there is some of that. Don't get me wrong. But you know what I have found kind of personally over the years is that there's just an absolute people don't care. I mean, their state jobs, they're kind of at their state job, ho hum. And well, we've always done it like that. And there's just kind of this air of meh, and it leads to situations in which things literally are being done incorrectly. But hey, we've done it like that before. We quit matching up the law. We quit really feeling as though we're here to do a job for the people. We're just here to collect a paycheck. Hey, don't get on me. I'm just doing what my boss told me to do. Right. So I think there's a whole lot of that. And I think that's what everybody has kind of known for years was that you give government money. It's kind of like you give a mouse a cookie. Remember that book? You give a mouse a cookie and all these, you give the government money. And they buy $9 million hammers and they figure out more ways to spend your money. And I mean, you can make a whole book on that just based off of give a mouse a cookie. So I think it's a whole lot of just, I don't care syndrome, I don't care syndrome.
I do think that not necessarily us, but the kind of disclosure, bringing things to light movement in itself is having a pretty serious impact because, like Stephanie said, she has emails saying that the elections are safe. If it wasn't out there that there are problems, they wouldn't address that. They wouldn't go to the links they go to say, oh, it's so safe here and this and that. So I think there is an effect somewhat.
Well, and I do think, when they get caught at stuff, then it's kind of like they get caught at their malfeasance. They're like, oh, and then you have to push back. And I do think there's a lot of that. But before we go on any further, I want to bring on Amber, so we've got plenty of time to talk about her. Well, and this is true too, Stephanie. People are not lazy, they're ultra distracted with survival. And I do think that there is that. And sometimes, me, I can be Debbie Downer on people. But you're right, and we've talked about that before. People are just, it's bread and circuses, like my German friend Christian told me when we were on vacation. So it is bread and circuses, but we just have to move past that. That's just something we've got to, even if it takes you 10 minutes out of your day to write a letter, just put that 10 minutes aside, or to talk to somebody else, or to listen to our podcast, even if you only have 10 minutes, or while you're doing something else, listen to the podcast. There are ways to do it. We just have to be able to, make ourselves do it. So Amber's on and ready. And is Amber ready? Amber's ready. Okay, so here we are. Good morning, Amber. How are you?
Good morning. Good.
It's so good to see you.
You too.
We love seeing you. All right. So tell us, I'm going to put on your, oops, that's your pretty picture. You were very good and put together a whole program for us. So hold on one second. We've got a couple of comments. Let's make sure we let everyone know about the COVID meeting. Oh, I forgot about that. Does anybody remember about that? I totally forgot. There's the girls who we kind of called them the Who girls. They went after they tried to make the legislature make sure that we weren't following, the Who. So they have a legislative study at the Capitol on October 17th, which was a Wednesday, I think is what it was. Hold on just a second. No, Thursday at 2:30 in room 455. So thank you so much, Melinda, for reminding me about that. I should have gotten that on, but thank you so much for reminding me about that. All right. Now, I'm so sorry. And please, would you like to start with your program for today?
Yeah. So August 27th, we had a runoff for the Republican candidates for sheriff here in Comanche County. My husband and I were out in Oregon visiting family, so I couldn't look at data before or after, and until we got back. And I was looking at the information like I do around a lot of different races the last 3 years. And I just found some odd things in the voter rolls. And voter rolls contain people's information such as their name, date of birth, date that they registered, the voter last time they voted, etc. But doesn't tell you who they voted for. It's literally just benign information. Okay. So as I was looking at that, I was following it, and for 23 days, not all Republicans that had voted on August 27th had voter credit in the data warehouse, which is odd because we've looked at a lot of races, a dozen or more races over the last 3 years, and you always see it populate about a week out.
About a week out.
Yeah.
So are you telling me that when I vote, it doesn't automatically go to the database?
Right. So you have, when you go in for early in person and in person, especially in person, you're signing a poll book, right? And and it's after the election that the county election board secretaries input that data that goes into.
So that's data from the poll book.
Correct.
Because Stephanie was like, what? I got a little lost too. So you're saying that data from the poll book is entered after they finish, and the election secretary then takes those poll books and enters the data.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's how we get credit for it.
Got it.
Yeah. And it's important to note that the tally of the vote is coming from the ballots that are ran through machines.
Okay.
And the voter history is from poll books, and also scanning the absentee ballots that have a barcode on them. All right. So
that's good information and stuff I hadn't really thought about. So the tally, I'm actually even writing this down. So the tally is from the machines, but the credit is from the poll book.
Yeah, in essence. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's very interesting. Okay. So go ahead.
Yep. So 23 days, not all the Republicans that should have, voted had gotten credit in Comanche County for August 27th election, which just seemed odd. And prior to that, I can't remember how many days it was, but I had seen that a Democrat had come forward. They had contacted the county election board, and then they contacted the news. And what happened is they received a Republican ballot for the sheriff race in person, and they pushed back at the poll worker and said, I'm not supposed to have this. And I don't know if there's an argument or how it ensued, but it was like, no, you're supposed to vote on this. So he went and voted on it, and he didn't feel good about it afterwards. So he went and looked and verified, and yes, sure enough, he shouldn't have received a ballot to vote for the Republican because he was a Democrat. Well, there were some other anomalies that came forward, and in the midst of this, because the news reported it, and the district attorney here saw it on the news, and then contacted legislators or whoever else, and there was some conversation with the county election board secretary, and they found problems, at least 8 of them, and the legislators here, all but one senator, so we had 4 House reps and 1 senator, that all sent a letter to the state election board asking for an investigation to happen, which is, I think that's unprecedented in the state.
Yeah, I do too. I don't think I've ever heard of that actually happening. I mean, I've heard of candidates going in and saying they wanted to have a recount, and the election secretary at the county, then has to arrange for a recount, but I've never heard of that.
Yeah, there's just been a myriad of issues over the last several months in particular that there's just some questions going on, like what's happening, and it boils down to procedures and process and different things. But
now this is in Comanche County specifically.
This is Comanche County specific, yeah.
Okay.
And
okay.
so as I'm looking into that information, I'm just like, I felt the need. I need to get a hold of the DA, and so I found a way to talk with him. And I'd never talked with him, never met with him before. And this is the night before a hearing, because he had filed to stop the certification of the election and potentially have a new election. Now, he knew, based on what the laws were, that it was really far-fetched that this would actually occur, but he didn't know what to do. He knew that something was wrong, and he wanted to bring it to the public's attention and try to do something, anything. And so we talked, and he's like, this is information that I wouldn't be able to speak on. He's like, would you be willing to testify in court tomorrow morning? And so therefore I testified the information I'd found, which was, it is kind of concerning that you're not seeing people, a couple weeks out or more with voter credit, saying that, yes, you had over these many people, Republicans, show up in the county that supposedly registered for sheriff, but not that many people. There's over 600 missing in the voter rolls. Where are they? Why has that not been completed?
Over 600 people that didn't have voter credit for that election?
Yes, and that continued for 23
Amber, that
days.
I mean, Comanche County isn't huge, is it? I mean, it's not tiny like some, like Luther, but I
Well,
mean,
it's
it's
Well,
a
and I think Stephanie had a good question also. How do
Yeah.
they reconcile the credits and the
Sorry, Stephanie.
tallies? How do they reconcile that?
they go from my understanding, they go based on the machine printout, and that's it.
So
And
they take the machine printout and they take the book and they reconcile it to make sure so many Republican votes were accounted for in the book.
supposedly, but the
Okay.
problem is there were so many different things going on that there was no way to actually reconcile it 100%. And when the DA and others went down to look at that information, that's when they discovered there were problems. And really, from what I was gathering, they couldn't reconcile that information even in the poll books. So in the testimony, it wasn't just me talking about over 600 people voter credit. I also found somebody that was a duplicate voter. So
Okay.
there was one person that had two different voter ID numbers on the voter roll. They got voter credit for early in person for the 27th of August. However, one of those duplicates was deleted on August 24th.
Huh. Who would have the power to delete that? Just someone at the county election?
The county and the state. And I know that the county the state based on a report that came out from the governor more recently, that they're working on things to clean up, right? That's been over since 2021. So it's very odd. And what I notice is that that person wasn't the only one that I've seen with some weird things with duplicates. If I have a duplicate person and I'll see it on the deleted file and they have voter credit for a race that doesn't make sense that they got credit in, or I go back and verify to see if both files are getting credit for the same races. If I backtrack on voter data that I have downloaded for previous days before then, I'll find both the voter files, and sometimes both of the registrations won't have voter credit for certain elections, but as soon as it's pulled over to the deleted file, it will have a voter credit.
Well, I want to give just a little context here for what you do, Amber. So you download the information from the database, either the state or the county database or whoever,
The state.
pretty consistently, and then you compare the older file to the newer file and see what's changed. Is that how you come to a lot of these conclusions?
Oh, yeah, because the state isn't capturing the information every day. So because the roles are updating every single day and there's different types of files in the state database. So we're capturing it and I can go back and reconcile or not reconcile certain activities. And sometimes it makes me have more questions as to why certain things are happening. And, I'm more intrigued by it and trying to analyze it. And solely because, well, one, I'm curious, but that time traveling voter, that somebody got voter credit for a future election, right? In 2022. So I'm trying to figure out how in the world all of this could be happening. So I don't know if it's a error in their database. I don't know if it's some type of algorithm or code that they've improperly inputted, or it's one that they don't know is happening. I just don't know.
Well, let me ask you this real quick. Outside of you going backwards or archiving, okay, we'll say that's probably a better word, archiving this data as it comes out daily or weekly or whatever, would there be any way for a general public guy like me to know that they deleted this person or this changed or that? I mean, is there any way to know, just as your general public, that this kind of stuff may be happening behind the scenes?
No, you're not going to know unless you're someone like me, right? That's inquisitive and goes to the open source data and it decides to look at it. You would have no idea, with the exception if you are looking at it, and like this would be a fluke if it happened, but if you were looking at data and went to the Oklahoma voter portal and plugged in someone's name and you had their date of birth, then you could see that that person has 2 voter registrations.
Yeah.
Because
but
I've
they
done
don't-
that, and I've been able to see both sitting there.
Yeah. But as far as you know, the county election boards or the state, whoever, they don't publish any kind of audit paper to say, yeah, we deleted this person, this had to change, or this. There's no published public record paper that shows an actual audit, from their side.
Not a specific breakdown. They'll just make statements. We deleted this many files, but they won't say, hey, we had this person or this many people.
But at least they are in somewhat saying, hey, we had to delete, 2 files or 5 files out of the voter rolls. Or, I mean, how do they word
they're
that?
not doing that consistently. It's basically they're coming out with statements, periodically, like with the governor publishing what the state election board told them, and said over 400 and some thousand people were deleted since, 2021. And yeah, so it's very, people just wouldn't know.
The point I'm trying to make is there's literally no transparency in that process whatsoever, even for someone like you that's trying to archive it and compare, consistently. It's still, tough to probably really make out what's happening.
Yeah.
Well,
and once people can look at the voter rolls, they just might not have an analytical mind too, and they might not see it.
Well, or you don't know what you're looking for, because I wouldn't have a clue. I mean, sometimes some of this that you're talking about, I'm trying so hard to wrap my brain around it because it's kind of going over my head. But I do want to, if we can go back to your slide presentation. So, because I do want to talk just a little bit about the sheriff's race, because that was a huge, that was a huge issue that I don't think enough people knew about, and that's what caused you to get super extra inquisitive, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so you're to explain this slide that we're on right now.
Okay, so I'll just read it for those that aren't able to see it. Comanche County District Judge Jay Walker rejected a petition Tuesday seeking to deny certification of the Comanche County Sheriff race. District Attorney Kyle Kabelka said it's questions about the election process, not the candidate who won, that prompted him to file a petition to stop certification of the Comanche County Sheriff's race. So the reality is that the judge did not have to let this case be heard in court because of how our laws are written in Oklahoma. Our laws specifically clearly outline that it's the candidate that has to file when there's an issue, and they have the deadline. So they have to file before elections on Tuesday. They have to file by end of day Friday.
Because you're supposed to in Oklahoma, you have the election on Tuesday, and then your board, whatever county you're in, your election board has to certify those results on the following Friday before 5 o'clock. That's what the law says.
Right. And they steamroll ahead. There's no guardrails in place. It's like whatever it is, you certify. People can't push back. It is what it is. The end, unless a candidate has filed.
Okay, but that's a good point, and that's something that I want to bring up, because that was part of what prompted my lawsuit against the state election board, was the fact that they basically told both Cheryl and I, they basically said, you can't not certify an election. I mean, you're derelict of duty if you don't certify the election. And I'm like, well, what if, a giant fire breathing dragon walked into a polling place and ate the, I'm being hyperbolic here, but I'm just saying there could be something hugely outstanding go wrong. And then I'm supposed to sit there at that table and go, yes, I vote to certify this election. I think in the scheme of things, that's like, there's a scale of wrong And that's way over on the wrong side of the scale. I mean, why do you have to just sit there and go, I vote to certify this? That doesn't make any sense.
Well, it was pretty awesome that the DA filed that the judge allowed it to be heard. And no matter which way it shook out, the judge, as I read the law and understand it, the judge had to allow the certification to go forward.
Right.
And quite frankly, even if there were so many overwhelming anomalies that would change the outcome of the race. And
I don't think people understand that. And I think, honestly, Amber, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that we should get out on this podcast is that people don't understand when you say I certified the election, it just means I sat there and went, I certified the election.
Yeah, you're literally just pencil whipping it. And what's really your role? The importance isn't as important, it seems. You know, if you have no authority to say, hey, hold on, there's
or
something
ask
here that's
any
wrong.
question at all. You can't, you can't even ask any question, and I don't think I think that's why even have certification then it's just kind of we want to put something in the law and make people feel better.
Yeah. Check the block. Yeah. So
what is this about the national change of address data set? Because you were telling me, you're right, Stephanie, that is wrong. She's right, it's wrong. So you were explaining to me earlier in the week about the change of address thing and that this is kind of being a problem. So, tell us about this.
Yeah, so the national change of address is a data set that can be utilized. I think if you go to the next slide.
Okay.
So this is Oklahoma statute. So if you look at C, it says subject to available funding. The National Change of Address Database is what we know as the United States Postal Service. And they have the most up-to-date current information of people moving out of state, in state, etc. And the law in Oklahoma has given the Secretary of the State Election Board to utilize the NCOA. Problem is, it's subject to available funding. So I know based on data, and there's some slides going forward, I know based on some data that I have access to, that we do have people that have moved out of state that are not showing inactive on the voter rolls like they should. So I know that they're not utilizing it. So if you go to the next slide.
Oops, sorry.
So there was some communication that I grabbed hold and I just kind of pieced together, didn't do verbatim what they said. So the communications. So when was the last time Oklahoma used the NCOA when cleaning voter rolls? The response was 2024 is the first year we had available funding. And they're planning on sending a mailing based on NCO data to voters to inform them you need to update your voter registration.
Well, I'll just say this. It has been my experience over a decade of paying attention and being in and out of the legislature to discuss issues that when lawmakers don't precedent something that, they're not making it a precedent, then they say subject to available funding, because then, if we do, fine. If we don't, fine. Well, either do it or don't do it, but don't just say if we do it. Then it's just a law in the books that's, again, meaningless until something else happens. So we've got to stop this little trick of subject to available funding. If it's important enough for you, Mr. and Mrs. Legislator, to write a bill about it, which becomes a law that people are supposedly supposed to follow, then either have the money or don't. I mean, just don't. If there's no money and you don't want to prioritize it, then don't write the bill. Otherwise, prioritize the funding and make it happen. Am I wrong?
Yeah. Nope, that's right. And it's important to note that was 2016 is when that was last updated. Okay.
Wow.
yep.
So between 2016 and 2024, we were not updating the rules based on the NCOA.
Correct. Because
Because of
this is
available
why,
funding.
well, this is why I talk about that the state and county election boards are not utilizing the full authority of the law in place to keep our voter rolls clean. This is one
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
let's
that's
go to
bad
the
juju.
next question. We're going to kind of dive into this. So part of this law says any state agency that purchased, subscribes to, or is an authorized or licensed user of the United States Postal Service's National Change of Address data set is authorized to share the records from the data set with the state election board. So my questions are, have they actively checked with any other state agency since 2016 per the law to utilize the NCOA? And why have they not utilized funding for the NCOA in previous years? Okay, so next slide. So this is the rough average cost for the year to have
Wait,
access.
no. No, now I'm just mad. I mean,
And,
That's a lot of money.
yes, and now this is not just me looking it up and saying, oh, I think it's this, because there's lots of information in the website here that I found this in. This is coming from an individual that I personally know that worked for the United States Postal Service for over 20 years. And I asked her to send me the information and where to find it so that I could give a brief rundown on what's going on. So I'm not walking into this just like, I don't know what I'm talking about. I have resources of individuals that have worked in this field. So we're talking about at minimum baseline $14,000, and that says for the first year. That's not saying a one-time poll. That's saying for the first year. Okay, next.
hold on. I just want to make sure everybody believes the same way I do.
All right, so if you look since 2016, at least from starting fiscal year, you can see appropriations and is what has been given to the state election board, just overall in general. So we have over 7 million, over 7 million, over 8 million, over 9 million, over 8, over 10. And that's overall arching, right? It's a lot of money. Understandable. It costs a lot to run the election.
But hold on, man. 14,000. That's, gosh.
I know. Go to the next slide. So this is the breakdown, and I'm showing a 22 budget summary just so people know what it looks like in the data set. All right, so go ahead and go to the next slide.
Love that peanuts for protection.
Yeah, for anybody that wants to know, that's just literally 10% of a single percent is all that would be.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay,
It's a
so the breakout of that from 2022. So we know for the processing, administration of the voter registration database, an election management system and their functions, right? In 2022 fiscal year, they received they had $5 million allocated to that process. Next slide. I know.
I have to.
Yep. In fiscal year 2023, it was closer, it was under 3 million, but it's still a really large chunk of money.
Well,
And
so
part of
wait,
it-
that's a huge that's a huge disparity.
It-
So
well, it
right
is,
from
but-
22, there was 52 or 5 million. And then in 23, there was basically 3 million. Why come?
I don't know. I don't know. But what I know is those are very large numbers. That's all I know. Go to the next one.
They're large numbers. But there's a big discrepancy between that number and this number.
I agree. So go to the next one.
Bizarre.
So again, over $2 million. Right?
And that's
So-
just for administration of the database and election management system. So
Right.
that would let's be specific about that. So that would be what you're talking about. Checking the voter rolls, making sure that the voter rolls are clean, adding people, making sure that the book is all the data from the book is put in after the election, all of those things that have to do with that function, correct?
Yes, yeah, the
Okay.
system called MESA,
Okay.
MESA. But realize that the county election boards, they manage their own files.
Well, they
And
have to upload them to the state.
they do. And the county, is paying the election board secretaries, not the state. So I don't know how the money's getting pushed in there, but we know we've got millions of dollars going to management, right? So then,
You got a slide on that, and I want to show that. But so it's interesting that Capitalist Sooner is saying it's not hard to reconcile this data, and this guy's a data guy, so he would know. Not doing it is clearly intentional. So interesting.
So here's the thing. I can question, like, why was there such a large number fiscal year 2022 of over 5 million? Well, we do know that the ERIC, the Electronic Registration Information Center, was put into law. So were funds appropriated for that? It was never enacted that we're aware of, right? And now it's been blocked in law. We can't use it. But is that where the large chunk of money had come in? I have no clue. No clue, because I don't have a total breakdown.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. But you're looking at over 5 million, over, 2 million consistently.
Yes, that was weird. That's just why 20.
Yeah, go back to the one that shows the cost of the NCOA. $14,000 for the year. So no matter which way you look at it, why wouldn't they allocate that $14,000 to a tool that would help keep our voter registration, in good shape? So we'll go to the next slide. Comanche County specifically, there was information that was ran, in September 22nd of 23 against our voter rolls and the National Change of Address database. And I'll talk about that in a second. But over on the left-hand side, just pulling this information from October 9th, in Comanche County, we have over 63,000 registered voters. That includes active and inactive, because the inactive also stay on our voter rolls. They don't purge them until a certain time prescribed in law. And so we have 80.7% of those voters are active, and 19.3% are inactive. There's certain criteria that needs to be met to put them inactive. But to me, that's like,
they have not. Help me remember. It's something like, and anybody who's watching, because we haven't got a great audience this morning, does anybody remember in law what it said? Because somehow 5 years is sticking in my head, but maybe it's less than that. So if the voter hasn't voted in 5 years, then they purge them from the roll or something.
Well,
and you have to re-register.
One of the data sets is if they have not voted in 2 presidential elections.
Okay. Which would be, wow, that'd be more like 8 years then, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, and they purge every April after the presidential election. So there's going to be potentially a large purge this coming April.
But see what Stephanie said. So that's my question for you, because I've heard this, and we've talked about this before on this program, especially when Wendy was on with us. Can people take any of the names of the 19.3% in Comanche County that are left on the rolls that are not active voters? Could they, if they wanted to cheat, an individual, this is not the state, doesn't have anything to do with the state. So could an individual find those numbers and register for an absentee ballot?
Well, it's a little more difficult. You'd have to have enough data set, because you can go to the Oklahoma voter portal and write name, date of birth. But in order to request the absentee ballot, you have to have a driver's license number or the social security number.
Okay. So, well, I'm glad you said that because there's been a lot of, like Stephanie said, those votes are open for theft. So I've heard that too, that people then can, if you're in the system and you're not voting, people can take those names and then turn them in for absentee ballots. But you're saying that would be like crazy hard.
That would be harder in our state than it would be anywhere else.
Okay.
I mean, nothing, it depends on, like, you could have a guru hacker that's
Yeah.
gained access into Service, Oklahoma, and has gained information, somehow that has driver's license numbers, etc. I mean, we do have something in IDEMIA called IDEMIA in our country, in every 50 states and over 130 countries, that has gained access to our stuff.
Yikes.
And they're a French-owned company, and they do the national ID cards for China and for the CCP. And in order to do business with the CCP, you have to turn over all of your information of other businesses that you have dealings with. So the state of Oklahoma, well, the entire United States, has turned over our personal information to a French-owned company that has given access to the CCP.
No way.
Kid you not.
Well, and then here, so both Stephanie and our friend Capella Sooner say dark web information. So, and I know I have a dark web tracker on my VPN, and I've had, I don't know, 2 or 3 notifications just recently that my basic info, name, date of birth, and address have been released on the dark web. So, I mean,
that's actually true of all citizens of the United States. That happened recently, and I can't remember the leak on that, but
there have been several. You're exactly right. There have been, I know, because when my VPN notifies me, they basically say, this is where that leak came from. We've identified it, and it came from this. And you're exactly right. It has been a couple of big hacker, things that happened to a business. Like one of them was a medical company, a healthcare company.
Oh, I've had, our stuff has been hacked so many times because of the government system being, my husband prior military. Like TRICARE has sent us so many notices throughout the years. And in fact, my daughter and I have free credit report stuff for our life because of the breach. It's nuts. So the database that I was talking about that I have access to that ran the NCOA against voter rolls in 2023. Now I haven't gone through all of these, but it is showing that 3,639 of them have moved, and the voter rolls aren't much different than what they are today, right? Because you have people leaving and coming and stuff. So, but that's 5.7% of registered voters.
Yeah.
5.7%. So in essence, potentially, that's at minimum how dirty our voter rolls are at the moment.
Well,
and it doesn't even matter if they moved in state or out of state, if they just moved down the street.
Well, but the point is that could throw an election. That number could throw an election.
Yeah, well, I can. I mean, 5 can throw an election.
Exactly. I mean, so that's what the real problem is. And the real problem is, I mean, people could legitimately vote in 2 places without.
Oh, they can. Absolutely.
If they wanted to.
Absolutely. And then moved and registered in another county or state, of those 3,000 of the voters, 511. But that's 14% of people. And I have gone in and verified 48 people have registered, like I've set eyes on, have registered in another state. And because I have just enough information, I have been able to verify in Texas and Georgia, people that have moved there, that these individuals are registered to vote in that state, down to I know what precinct they're in.
So it's legitimate then. So people literally could, if they wanted to be nefarious, could vote in 2 places.
Absolutely they can. And I can specifically speak to that because our son had moved here, and he moved back to Oregon last summer. And before he moved back to Oregon, Oregon still had him on the voter rolls there, right? and he didn't submit anything, but he did get an Oklahoma driver's license. Well, if Oklahoma was doing their part and transmitting that data to Oregon, and Oregon was doing their part, then they would have put him inactive or moved him from the voter rolls, whatever the Oregon laws are, but they never did.
Yeah.
We followed it. And then he moves back to Oregon last summer, and he now has a driver's license there again. Hasn't requested to be removed from the Oklahoma voter rolls because we're tracking it to see what happens with it. And sure enough, he's still on the voter rolls. Now, granted, July 11th of this year is when he finally got the new driver's license, right? But they're saying that they have funding for the NCOA for 2024. When was it that they ran it this year already, if they have? And if they have done it since July 11th, or, then why is my son still showing active versus inactive?
Well, you need to address Stephanie's question. So we need to cancel all voter registrations in other states. I thought they removed you when you moved your registration.
They do not remove you. They put you inactive. And they have not been sending mailers out based on the move through the United States Postal Service when you do a change of address. Because as they stated, they have not had the funding, even though it's 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So for 7 years, it's been on the books that they've had the authority available to funding. But you're telling me over $5 million, almost $3 million, every year, you couldn't take $14,000 and keep our voter rolls clean.
So Stephanie's just telling us she's voting in 2 places. I'm kidding, Steph. I'm just kidding.
She came from
Kidding.
Texas.
But I'm saying, I mean,
so
and I
go.
Hold on one second. I want you to make a point that you made to me the other day because I found it so shocking and important. So I know you weren't. I was just kidding. So your son in Oregon, I mean, that he could. Now let's play this out. So your son, if he wanted to, he could request an absentee voter registration from Oregon while he was voting here. Am I wrong?
That's correct. If he had, and in fact, while he was gone and living here in Oklahoma and registered to vote here, and in fact voted in the election in 2022, he received an absentee ballot at his location where he was registered at. That's problematic. And he went in person and voted here. Now, the same is true on the reverse right now, is that Oregon is only absentee. They only vote by absentee, by mail. Okay. Oh, wow. So he's probably already received his absentee ballot in the mail, or is going to very shortly for Oregon. But if he really wanted to absentee and do something wrong and nefarious intentional, he could right now request an absentee ballot from the state of Oklahoma.
Yeah. So, but here's the part I really wanted to get to. You're in Comanche County. So for people who don't know, and we've got some nice comments on Rumble. I'll get to you guys in just 1 second, but I want to follow this train of thought. So you're in Comanche County, which is, you don't touch the border, but you're close, right? Or do you touch the border?
Yeah, we're about 40 minutes away.
Yeah. So anybody could leave Comanche County, go to Texas, and legitimately, if they wanted to, after they've established a residence, or they've turned in their voter registration in Texas, they literally, oops, I've got to go take a call. I'll be right back. Can you finish my train of thought for me, Michael? Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I'm sure she was going to say they could literally vote in Comanche County, or go register, or drive down to Texas and vote there.
Yes. Yeah. And in fact, I not somebody that I'm tracking that's registered to vote in Texas, but I did find someone that based on the NCOA data that they had moved to Texas, but they voted in person in Comanche County after they had moved. So It is questionable. It's a problem. It's a problem. And I know that some of the response that I saw back was, well, from the state election board is, well, they took us out of ERIC that were going to help us to do this. Well, ERIC actually cost more than just paying for the NCOAA. So why would you have a nonprofit that takes our information and sells it, and goodness knows what they're doing with it, instead of just paying $14,000 to run the information yourself? And again, have you verified with other state agencies, like in law, that it states, are they utilizing the NCOAA anywhere? Because then it doesn't cost you anything, because it can be shared for free.
Yeah.
For no extra cost.
Well, and I just wanted to back up what you said earlier, because I just looked. You become inactive in Oklahoma if you don't vote in 2 general election cycles. And then I also found an article, Amber, from 2021 from the state election board itself, where they removed 4,034 duplicate registrations back in 21. But like how often? Okay, so let's say you vote in another state, or you register in another state, you become inactive in Oklahoma. When would they actually delete you or purge you from the rolls? I mean, might it take another 5 or 6 years? Or, I mean, do they do this consistently?
2+. Because I'm seeing people that look to me like, goodness, why aren't you taking them off? Like, this is ridiculous. So it's 2+ at minimum, I think, but there's personal opinion in there too. Our laws are just written so bad. But what's important to notice is not just about duplicate voters moving out of, and moving out of state. We have an issue in this state that they've been identifying finally, right? Duplicate voters in state. So you might have 2 people with duplicates in the same county, right? 2 voter registrations. And then you'll also see that the person will move to another county in Oklahoma. So they have a voter registration in Comanche County and let's say Oklahoma County. But what's odd about it is the voter ID numbers, right? When we say duplicate, we don't mean the same voter ID number. They have a totally different voter ID number when there's a duplicate. It's not like, oops, I put the person on there, twice with the same number. No, it's different. Now, when you move out of county, I'm not understanding why it appears, as I look at it, that the county election boards are not looking at the state data to verify if that individual already has a voter registration in the state of Oklahoma.
So the county, so any kind of, so is the issue really starting with the county not going out at least to even check at the state level? I mean, is that the first
That's what it
real
appears
problem
to me. That's what it appears to me, because the county election board in law is the one that is responsible of their voter roll maintenance. So the question would then be, do they have the authority to look at the statewide level database? Well, kind of. I mean, they should have access to it on their end, right, at the county election board, but at minimum, they would have access to it the same way I do, through the election data warehouse that anybody can gain access for free, and they could go sort that information themselves. It'd be way more time consuming.
Well, I mean, you would think that the state and county databases communicate with each other in the first place. And when something changes in the county or the state, either or, let's say you move whatever, when you're at another county, you would think it would immediately flag and say, hey, this guy's still registered in Oklahoma County. Now he's in Comanche County. How hard can that be?
Yeah, it appears it's not happening. And so so let's say there's 2 different scenarios on this too. So let's say someone's registered in Comanche County and they've been registered before 2011, before we had the new system MESA implemented to hold our voter information. Okay. So before 2011, our voter ID numbers started with the county in which we live in. So Oklahoma County is number 55. Comanche County is number 16. Cleveland County, I think, is number 14. Tulsa County is 72. So your voter ID numbers were starting with Comanche County, 1600, yada, 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 right? After the MESA system was implemented, the voter ID numbers now start with 800, etc. And I can understand, you know, a voter ID number when you have a duplicate. I don't understand duplicates, but if you have a voter ID number that's and a voter and they're duplicates, then that the new voter ID number would be an 8.
Yeah.
Because that would go statewide versus county specific. So if they left Comanche County with a voter ID number with starting with a 16 and they moved to Oklahoma County, well, they need to be, have the 800 number that's more malleable. Does that make sense? Jenny, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, no, but then I ended up having to get out for a second. So,
Okay. All right.
I may have gotten I may have gotten a little lost there, but you've got Plastic Girlie asking why issue a new voter ID number anyway? Why couldn't you just update the information using that same number?
Yeah.
How does that help? But back up just a second. So Stephanie, who was commenting just a second ago, did you discuss this?
No, we didn't.
So Stephanie actually just went out, remember, because she was saying she came here from Harris County, Texas. So she went out and just checked hers and said that their voter status is in suspense. This indicates that the voter registrar's records may not be up to date. You're still eligible. Whoops, sorry. You're still eligible to vote. It's not. Sorry, Stephanie. It's so hard to see this. You're still eligible to vote. However, you'll be asked to provide updated information the next time you vote.
Okay.
So
to me, not knowing all their systems in place, that is possible that they received notification that you got a driver's license in a different state, that they ran your information against the National Change of Address database. I don't know their laws, their procedures at all in Texas. But those would be two things that would, stand out to me.
Well, she says that she has to mail in a notarized letter to be removed from the rolls in Texas.
Yeah.
Well,
and how many people are actually going to do
problems with what? Sorry, Michael.
I said, and how many people are actually going to go through that entire process to do that?
Well, that's right. And that's something that I've spoke about before, I think, but is that Terry and I were registered in the state of Oregon before we moved here. And we fought for over 6 months getting ourselves off the voter rolls. And we went through the process numerous times. And I finally had to call the Secretary of State there, because that's who does the voter stuff there. And in essence, they're like, well, it'll catch up. And I said, no. I said, this is what's happened. This is who I've contacted. I am sick and tired of dealing with it. And I know exactly what system you're using, Eric. And I want to be removed. And you must remove my husband as well, because we should not be registered to vote there. 24 hours later, we were removed. 2 weeks later, Terry's popped back on as an active voter.
Wow.
I had to call them and they removed him again.
Wow.
But see, the bottom line here is, like, I think it was Stephanie who said something a minute ago about this. Tell me how many people are going to do that. Like when my mom passed, I immediately called the state election board and said, you need to take my mother, off. I can send you her, death certificate so that you'll know that she passed. But how many people are going to do that? I think that's the problem, is if we had people, this is the pathetic thing. Look at how many people are, voting in your county, and you can't tell me that there aren't more than 63,000 people in your county. So there aren't even people that are voting, let alone the people who are voting are paying attention to what they're doing.
Well, and think about the ones that are still active on the voter rolls, right? That have moved. I didn't break that number down of the 5.7%. But think about the candidates. They're spending money on mailers and going door knocking and doing different things. It just creates a slew of issues and problems.
Yeah. So Stephanie said, I need to get back and remove my daughter. Well, I think I told this story on here once before. When I was mayor, we wanted to, the bias is built into not disenfranchise a voter, but leaving on those who have passed or moved needs a process that accounts for the ability of modern technology to be accurate. And that's, again, kind of what I was saying at the beginning. Well, but we've always done it this way. There may be new technology. Well, but I don't even know what that is, and I don't want to work that into my budget. There's just such a, meh, kind of feeling about all of this. It just doesn't seem like anybody. I don't know, but what I was going to say was, when I was mayor, we were going to send out a letter just to let people know, not to tell them how to vote, just a letter. We asked our attorney that just said, hey, there's a sales tax vote on this day. Make sure you put that on your calendar, because we don't want anybody to be disenfranchised from a sales tax vote, right? So we just put that out. Well, a number of us just sat down and put the letters together to send them out ourselves, because we don't have that many, on the voter rolls here. When I sent that out, I got back a stack of letters like that. Why? Because those people were not on the voter rolls. They weren't even listed at that address anymore. That's ridiculous.
And
that's ridiculous.
And if the NCOA had been utilized, those voters would have been moved to inactive, and they would not have been individuals that you would have sent something to, more than likely.
I think, Plastic Girlia, that the death certificates do get sent automatically. I just wanted to make sure to cover all of my bases there. So I called them too.
Yeah, and it looks like, based on the information, that they may be sending them in batches once a month.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, just based on the deletion. There is something I wanted to bring up, and I forgot to make a slide about it. But there was an article, big happenings in Oregon, right, which applies to here too. But that the governor and Secretary of State jointly called for an audit of the DMV, which for us would be Service, Oklahoma, after a new report discovered additional errors. There's lots of errors. They have people that are illegals that are registered to vote, and this is why we cannot have driver's license given to non-citizens in the state of Oklahoma, because there are clerical errors, intentional, unintentional, doesn't matter. No matter what the law is, the clerical errors happen, and there are over 1,500 people or more that are illegals, not citizens. I should say, not citizens of the United States. They might have a green card, but not citizens, and they are registered to vote or not supposed to be. And they did find at least 2 people voted in an election because of that. And they said clerical, technical, and policy errors. And that's what I've been trying to hit hard on is, it may not be intentional, nefarious, bad, but when you do not have good procedures, standard operating procedures in place,
Sorry,
right? And counties don't have, there's no accountability at the county level, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm very frustrated with it all. So let's go into the next slide, because we can keep going on.
Well, but I will say this. I think part of the reason why we're all very frustrated with this isn't Mount Everest to climb here. This isn't that. This seems like it would be a fairly simplistic thing to do if we just would sit down and say, every election board needs to do this and this and this and this, and then that makes sure that our voter rolls are secure. But I don't even think our from what I've looked at, and I'm not you or Wendy, I do not believe that that I've looked at this thoroughly enough, but I have not seen anything that says anything about that, about cleaning up the voter rolls.
No, it's just the laws that are not written well with the cleanup of the voter rolls. This whole law about cleaning up voter rolls and doing the great purge, in essence, the April after a presidential election, that is the wrong method to be going about it. In fact, we need to have that reversed, and it should be happening prior to a presidential election.
Oh, wow.
We
All right,
know that not everything's going to get caught, but They obviously had a mechanism they chose not to utilize. So how come in the fiscal year 2024, there's less money than there was in 2022 allocated to the state election board, but at no point before the money went down did they ask for or choose to allocate funds for the NCOA at $14,000?
And I'm going to add on top of that, when they knew 2024 was a presidential election year. It's not like that snuck up on them and bit them in the butt. You know what I'm saying?
No.
I mean, we pretty much knew it was coming
No,
along.
and personally, I know that, I don't want somebody that our taxpayer money is going to, an unelected official, right, appointed, anybody that sits in the position. I don't want them going out and giving presentations disparaging other people that have looked into information and are concerned. How about maybe that $300 or more that you used that day, or per day, could have gone towards that $14,000 to help pay for the NCOA. I think the voter rolls are way more important than disparaging citizens
who have legitimate questions. Then put an exclamation point on that. Citizens who have legitimate questions. We're not just making things up out of thin air. You've clearly looked at this data. You're not making this up. I don't understand why they can't hear citizens with legitimate concerns and why we have to push back. Well, that's election misinformation. Well, it's just, that's it. No.
It gives you the feeling of the popular kid and the nerd. You're not in my clique, so I'm not going to listen to you, and I don't want you to be a part of it, because my thing is why are you so concerned about CYA, right? Because that's what it appears to be, CYA versus just giving truth and doing the right things by everyone.
Well, I'm going to go back to this. Do you remember the live stream that I did on Corey Stephanie? Remember the live stream I did on Corey DeAngelis, and this school choice guy who ended up, he had a background in homosexual pornography, but he was the expert, right, for school choice. I'm kind of, just because you've been appointed to something doesn't make you an expert. You may not have any background in elections at all, but you were appointed by somebody else to be in that position, and yet somehow you're an expert, and then some person who actually looks at the data and has studied this kind of thing for themselves and has legitimate questions is poo-pooed because they're not an expert. I mean, I've seen this happen when I said something at an ethics commission public meeting, very polite, but kind of, yeah, whatever. I mean, this has got to stop. I mean, you're not an expert just because you were elected. You're not an expert just because you were appointed. You're not. I'm sorry, but you're not. And there may be citizens who actually have more information. And if you were a true public servant, you would say, oh, wow, yeah, okay, let's talk about this. That's not what's happening here. Sorry.
Yeah. No, yeah. Well, let's go to the next slide.
Hey,
Okay.
wait, hang on real fast. Look at this.
Okay.
Look at this. I just want to show you this. This was from August 28th in the paper. Oklahoma election system 100% accurate, says chief election official. Just want to throw that in there.
Okay,
so I'm 100% accurate ever.
Okay, that's exactly what I was going to say, Amber, and God love you for that, because you know what? I'm not an expert in statistics, but I've actually had it since I have a master's degree in science. And I can tell you, you can't be 100% on anything. So
but Jenny,
that in and of itself should raise significant questions about who's the secretary of our state election board.
Yeah, look. I mean, Stephanie agrees. I mean, we're 100% safe. They're telling us right here it's safe, so it has to be safe. I mean, there's no reason they wouldn't print something like this and say something like this if it
In
wasn't
a
100%
media
accurate.
statement, read that paragraph out loud, because I can't really read it from here. In a media statement, Oklahoma State Election Board Secretary Paul Ziriak said,
Hang on.
Post-election audits conducted. Post-election audits conducted after Oklahoma's June primary election confirmed the accuracy of the state's voting system with a 100% match of the certified election results. Okay, so that, what I'm gathering is that it's the tally of the vote, it's the machine printout that they're verifying.
yes, which
It's
could
not
be 100%
the paper
correct.
ballot.
Yes.
It's not the paper ballot, one vote. It's not the going and referencing it to the poll book on top of it. That is not a true 100% audit. That is a check the block audit. Plastic girl, yeah. You know, it's a hogwash.
No, I completely understand that. So what he's saying is, and he could be correct there. Absolutely. What he's saying there is he took these numbers, the poll books, and matched the poll book. That's what Stephanie's saying. Yeah, not reconciling the roles. So what he did was just a small snippet of the overall picture that would have the best chance of being 100% accurate. Yeah. Am I wrong?
Right.
Yeah.
So when was that published? What date?
That was August 28th.
Huh, that's funny, because August 27th is is the election here in this county, and there were problems. In fact, at least one precinct was found to not even be keeping track of which ballot was given, like it was a Republican or Democrat ballot, right? Was being given to each of the people. So it's just crazy.
But that's the point, though, Amber, is he can say that because he's taken one tiny little section of the whole overall picture and said, well, this is 100%. Okay, but that's not, so what? In literal terms, you've given us a section of the pie. What about the rest of the pie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so you want to go on to the next slide? Sorry.
Let's go on.
Here's one more thing that I think is important.
Another?
Right here, he says, after the June 18th primary election, Zuriak's tasked 76 of the 77 counties to conduct manual tabulation of audits. So they did a manual tabulation of audit ballots in randomly selected races across the state. The audits were open to the public and included election day precincts, in-person absentee ballots, and mail-in absentee ballots.
There was?
That's what they said.
It was open to the public?
That's what they said. The audits were open to the public.
I didn't see any media publicity thing in my county or anywhere that was going to occur.
Yeah. Well, maybe yours is the one county. See, they did 76 to 77. Maybe yours is the one county.
That's possible. One never knows. And why wasn't it all 77?
You might look into that and then come back and report on that yourself, because I would just be interested to know, did all of that get done? Because I've never seen anything at all that had to do with absentee ballots, because that's my big bugaboo, is the absentee ballots. And I've never seen an audit with absentee ballots. I'm not saying it doesn't occur. I'm saying I haven't seen it. And if somebody can show me where it is, please do that. And we'll come back, and because I publish a blog with this information in it, and I will add that to it. But, so far, I've never seen anything like that myself. Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. So data poll from October 9th, Comanche County alone, voter registrations. Okay, verbiage. It's my big thing is people have to learn the verbiage on stuff. An elector is a voter. All right, There are 75 missing dates of birth on voter registrations, and there are 103 missing registration dates. Just Comanche County. It doesn't matter if they're an inactive or active voter, they're missing. Even if they were inactive, it should still be sitting there. So,
Okay, well,
go to
for
the next
those of
slide
us
why
in
it's-
the for those of us in the cheap seats, let's go over that. So I could be 16. Right? I mean, if there's no birth date, I mean, how do you know
Well,
how
right.
if I'm a qualified elector? Because don't forget that's the other part. A qualified elector. So a qualified elector has to be the person who has the correct birth date, who is actually a resident of that county, who's a citizen of Oklahoma in the United States, all of that kind of stuff. That's a qualified elector.
Right. So go to the next slide real quick, because
Okay.
we're literally going to go into this. So why? And it is high importance, right? Like, seriously, come on.
Sorry.
Yeah, no,
I
you
stole
jumped the
your
gun. Next
thunder a
slide.
little. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Go to the next slide.
Okay.
This is why it's important. Oklahoma Statute 26 4-103. We have laws that absolutely outline persons who will become qualified electors. It is based on the age that they are. It is based on when you have to be registered to vote and by when. We have 75 people in Comanche County with no date of birth. We have 103 individuals with no registration date. Because of this law, these individuals are not qualified to be electors in the state of Oklahoma at all. The end.
And so let's make this point again. So could 103 votes throw an election?
Yes, 2 votes can throw an election. 1 can throw an election depending on what type of race it is at the moment, if it's a winner take all or a runoff.
So then our elections can't be 100% accurate. So we're not even
Correct.
talking about election security here, because I know there's been a lot of that, and you can't say our elections aren't secure, blah, 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 voting. We're not even talking about that. We're talking about the fact that there are people in the system who are supposed to be valid electors in the state of Oklahoma who are not, who could be voting, who according to law should not be voting, cannot be voting, and could be changing election outcomes just by the fact that they are voting. Did I sum that up properly?
Yes. And just overall reaching the last data that I looked at more recently, we still had over 170,000 registered voters in the state of Oklahoma that don't have a registration date. They are not qualified electors based on that law. And yes,
but who's checking the law?
many
See, that's the
have
other
voted.
problem.
Mm-hmm.
Who's checking that?
Well, it is the response in the law, as far as I have read, it is the county election board's responsibility to maintain their voter rolls.
So they should, every county should be looking at that and verifying that for themselves. And you're saying Comanche County is not doing that according to your research.
According to the research.
So how many others
recent
are
data
doing
poll.
that? So how many others are doing that? And I'm going to throw something else out here. One of the things that really bothered me when I was on the Oklahoma County election board, when the absentee ballots would come in, if you'll recall, there was a law, and I've said this wrong, and I hate saying things wrong, so please note that I may be wrong in saying this, but oh gosh, I don't know why I have a mental block on this. The person who affixes their seal to the
Notary.
Thank you. I don't know why I have a mental block on that term. So a notary, one single notary can only notarize, I thought it was 20, but somebody told me it was 10, but it's no more than 20. So let's go with that.
Unless they have special permission, I think.
Unless
they
have
the secretary.
unless they have special permission. So when I was at the Oklahoma County Election Board, those absentee ballots would come in. Nobody was stacking those up to make sure that that happened, because they should have been stacked up so that Stephanie Smith didn't have 7 or 17 or, you know, whatever of them here. And that was never done. So, and that was a big problem for me. And I even mentioned that as well before I was fired. So how many counties aren't even doing that? If we're going to have laws and then people aren't following the laws, can somebody explain to me why we have the laws? That's all I want to know. Just explain it.
No, and I agree. And county election boards, we know that Cleveland County, at least in 2022, had allowed absentee ballots to go through that didn't have the notary stamp that should have required it.
Yeah.
They had the number and the signature, and that was it. But that is not a legal notary. Now, I don't know that they're doing that any longer, but they certainly did it, you know, in that one election that it was noticed and notated.
We have a comment for you on Rumble, Amber. Miss MJ says, Amber, it's my opinion you should be over the election board. You're a rock star. I wish I had time to participate like that.
Yeah. Well, Amber, I was gonna.
Capitalist Sooner says too, each notary is required to maintain a record of what they've notarized, and that should be audited as well.
Yeah.
And again, where's all of this money that's going to the state election board? How these millions of dollars? Is there no way that could be used to do? I mean, come.
No, I agree. Well, and to Capitalist Sooner, you know, Nathan Dahm, if I'm remembering correctly, he actually proposed a law that would require notaries to present their books, right, to verify. But I don't know if it ever even made it to get voted on, because a lot of his stuff got shot down.
Our friend at Visit agreed with MJ, Miss MJ.
Yeah.
So
well, Amber,
apparently you have been appointed.
Yeah. I was going to tell you, I read further down in that article, and they said they exempted Carter County because they already did like a big recount for one of a sheriff race or something there. So that's why Zuriak exempted that. But later on in the article down at the bottom, this is what he says. You'll like this. This is Zuriak here. Oklahomans can be proud that our state has a voting system that is accurate and secure. Post-election audits and manual recounts in Oklahoma have proven it over and over and over again. That's what Zuriak said. Post-election audits were first authorized by the legislature in 2019 and are now a routine part of the election process. I've never heard of that ever.
Well, and just because you say it doesn't mean it's so. And like we talked about on a previous podcast, you know, I was part of, at least I was at the Cleveland County, you know, courthouse during the the Keys and was it Keys? Keys and Standridge thing, and one missing ballot, physical ballot. You know, so where is it now? I you know, I do know that based on talking to people that have worked elections, that there are times that ballots can get stuck in the machine and in the box and stuff like that. But it's still a missing ballot, and so that's not 100% accurate.
Yeah, and I think that's what I object to. I'm not saying that our elections are rigged, or I'm not saying anything bad about that. But what I'm saying is it feels to me as a person that there's a lot of rhetoric coming out of the state election board, but then it's not necessarily, we're not given the actual specifics here, because it's just little snippets of the picture. It's, again, like I said earlier, it's not the whole picture. And I think, and we're not saying, you know, that the election process is horrible in Oklahoma. That's not what we're saying here at all. Mm-hmm. And I don't even want that to be a consideration. I don't ever want anybody to say, oh, well, they're over there just talking about how bad elections are here. Nope. That's not what we're saying. We're trying to bring up the point that there are some things that clearly aren't being addressed, and those we have questions about, and those we want answers to. That's all we're saying.
Yeah. Well, standards, policies, procedures, administrative rules that violate the election laws, you know.
Well, and this is a big deal.
It's a slippery slope. You end up being like Oregon, you know, and Michigan and other places that are coming out with, hey, We have this kind of information. Stop giving us a blanket wash statement of everything is good, nothing to look and see here. We are not stupid. We know that there is always going to be error with data management, number one, right? Human error, system error. There's all kinds of things. You can't say 100%. There's nothing 100% in this life.
I think that's when the public trust gets violated, because if you want to say things like, it's 100%, or we, this and that, without saying, we've looked at this carefully. We had some questions come up. And so we've looked at this carefully, and here's what we found out. All of that data is public, so you can look at it. That would dispel so many questions. That would allow people to have some public trust about what's going on. But when you just have somebody saying, elections are 100% in Oklahoma, and you shouldn't even question them, or intimate that you shouldn't question them, or they shouldn't be questioned, I think right away you have a problem there, because just like you said, Amber, nothing's 100%. Yeah. Everybody should have contingencies for different things. And if we don't have that, then that's the problem. And checks and balances and rechecks.
Well, and that comes to a point, right? Is that I wasn't in there, but it was reported in the paper that the county election board secretary here in Comanche County recently, that answered the DA in court that said that she hasn't been given any guidance on what irregularities are.
Now what?
Yeah. Wow.
This county election board secretary, based on what I saw in the paper that was reported, she told the DA during the questioning in court that she had not gotten guidance from the state election board on what an irregularity is. And Jake Merrick made a funny on his thing and said, well, I guess, people don't know what a woman is. And in Comanche County, they don't know what an irregularity is. It's a play on. It's actually pretty funny. I chuckled. But, the thing is, though, is that's problematic as well. And I
think the biggest, honestly, I think the biggest, easiest thing to fix that you've brought up here today is this qualified electors thing. That just really, that chunks my apples. I mean, that really, I just made up a new thing. That really
too much apple.
It really makes, it just really makes me aggravated. I mean,
the 14,000, I mean, how, I mean, it's almost disingenuous to not spend 14,000 to just coordinate with probably the most accurate relocation database in the United States.
Right. And I did get some information, talking to somebody that's, worked in USPS and some other stuff, that, they might have been running the information through IDEMIA, because that's what Service Oklahoma utilizes. And that person couldn't remember specifically, but she thought that IDEMIA used like Equifax or one of those places to bump information off for address or for the addresses and verification of the voters. But the problem is, if the state is utilizing that, it's not accurate and up to date. I mean, I've lived all over this country and outside the United States, and I can tell you my stuff is not caught up for years sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's not an accurate subset, and they've had at their fingertips the authority to utilize it, and they should have done it. When they have 1 year, they had over $5 million allocated.
What are you chuckling about, Michael?
Well, I'm just thinking, your phone sure knows where you are. Amazon sure knows where you are. Facebook sure knows where you are. I mean, how hard can it be with today's technology of data out there to not know where people are? I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, I know. So, we have a problem.
Well, and I think, and in all honesty, the thing that I really love about you, except, I mean, you're lovable, but I'm just saying beyond that, I think the thing that I really appreciate about you the most you had specific instances there. It's not like you just are going, I feel like maybe there's some things. I mean, you really have gone and done your due diligence to check this stuff out. And I think that's an important thing to keep reminding people, is that this isn't, I mean, it can be your opinion, right? Because I mean, it's all of our opinions until it's, absolutely proven as fact or whatever. But the point of the matter is, it's your opinion based on a set of facts that you've determined by looking at data that's open public data so that people can see it. So there shouldn't be any reason why we should be labeled as some kind of, election deniers or heretics or something like that. That's not anything. We're not doing anything of the kind. It's very specific stuff that could easily be addressed if somebody was willing to do that. Am I wrong?
Well, and Jenny, it's obvious that I come across credible because I was asked by a district attorney that I have never met, had one conversation with, to come and testify in a court of law.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big deal in our county. Yeah, we just, we set precedent, even though it didn't overturn anything, which wasn't the point. It was about bringing awareness.
Right.
It was a huge precedent. Win or lose, you guys, you have to keep going after something, even if you know there's going to be a loss, because the precedent is so important. Yeah. This will make a difference in the future, even if it's just giving credibility to when you lobby as a citizen to legislators as to why certain laws need to be changed, and authority needs to be given more back to the people and the county, and stop the overreach of centralizing our elections. And we need to do some proper decentralization that will not harm citizens or our elections.
Yeah.
So Visit says there's clearly a lack of motivation to get this right at the local, state, and national level. You have to ask why. The IRS sure has more accurate lists of citizens with many additional variables. So, and I think Stephanie's right. And that's the thing that upsets me, because it's the flip side of the, well, you can't be an expert because you haven't been appointed or on this board or you can't be that. It's the same. It's the kind of the flip side to that.
And even to your case, Jenny, and like what Amber just said about setting the precedent, I mean, that's part of the reason why you went ahead with your lawsuit the way you did, because I mean, you didn't go into the election board saying, hey, this whole thing's corrupt, this whole thing's bad. They gave you a set of rules to do your job. And because you asked a simple question, basically.
Because I wanted to try to do the job.
Yeah, because you actually wanted to do the job the way that it was spelled out by law, because you're asking the question now, now Jenny, is this, Jenny, is that, or whatever, simply because you were just trying to do the right thing and do your job. But I agree, that if you didn't go forward with that lawsuit, then that's just another win for the other side.
Yeah.
In one way or another. I mean, we have to at least be able to have a system to where we can ask questions in one way or another.
Isn't that weird? Yeah. We're not saying, we hate you guys, blah, blah, blah. We're not doing anything like that. It's just, hey, we have these questions, can't you just answer these questions, or can't we discuss them or whatever? So I think that's the bottom line is, and the reason, I guess, why I'm so passionate about this, and we're also passionate about it, is government is of the people, by the people, for the people, not of the appointed, by the friends of the appointed, for the appointed. It's not that. And we've got to get out of this me government, you not government. I mean, we've got to be in a situation in which we can go to our government, go to our officials, and go to whatever and say, hey, we've got a problem with this. And they say, because it's a government of the people, for the people, that they say, oh my gosh, that's kind of odd. Well, let's sit down and work this out. What's the problem with that? It may come out and they're like, well, that wasn't, it didn't pan out, Jenny, you were wrong. Oh, okay. Well, thank you so much for even looking at this so we could see if it was or it wasn't. Wow, that sounds mean and awful and horrible, doesn't it?
I don't know, Jenny, I'm not afraid of being wrong, and
Me
when I know
either.
better, I do better, right? And so there may be things that I didn't understand as clearly 3 years ago, but I understand a lot better now, But what people have to keep in mind is when they are looking at information and, putting it out there for the public to have conversation and open up their eyes, is to make sure that you're not attacking somebody, to the point where it becomes, you become attackable, right? Like they want to come back and attack on you.
Well,
And
Amber, I want to ask you what kind of goes along with what Capitalist Sooner said. Where do you think where is the blockage in cleaning up the voter rolls? Is it like the actual just county election people? Is it the legislators? Is it the overarching state government? I mean, where is the problem with cleaning the rolls?
so I think there might be a myriad of things, but the foundation starts at the county election board, right? And and we know that there's lots of elections happening in the counties constantly, and they are just, I know that times I'm sure they are completely overworked and it's very stressful. And on top of it, there's not a lot of trying to get poll workers to come in. I don't see advertisement of it. There's nothing out there. So they're scrambling to get poll workers and things. So there's lots going on. Plus they have to do their daily thing and by the laws. But if they don't have the resources to clean up the voter rolls effectively and keep an eye on them as well as they can, then those county election board secretaries should be lobbying their county commissioners and saying, I need another person at least for this period of time throughout the year, even if it's part-time. I need someone to help me with data maintenance, and maybe some counties have the funds and maybe some don't. But my question would then be, can you have volunteer citizens help you identify the information, and then it would be easier for you to go in and clean it? Now, I think it's also the laws and how they're written, and they need to be looked at better, and authority needs to be very clear, like the NCOA database. That is a very minimal one. But at no time should we ever have, I don't care who's doing it, have an elector, aka a voter, on the rolls that has a missing date of birth or a registration. And we should never, ever see those individuals that are in the system with any voter credit of any sort. Now, there is an exception with a date of birth not being shown, and that would be for the people that are in protective status per the law, whether they're a judge and they've applied for it or in witness protection, whatever's going on, right? But I do know that their registration date is allowed to be there and should be there, but I am even seeing those ones having missing registration dates.
Yeah.
So technically they're not a qualified elector. Could you imagine a judge, if it was a judge and they're not a qualified elector? I mean, I'm just saying, I'm just making a comment flippant. But so
yeah, but seriously. So there's Miss MJ, our friend here on Rumble this morning, said this. They're always bragging how much we have in the rainy day fund. If it were really that important to them, that they could pull the funds from there. And not only that, let's talk about the amount of taxpayer dollars that are given to private businesses because the administration prefers them over other businesses and wants to incentivize those over poor other businesses who don't get the state administration likes me and I'm prioritized over others. So all of those little tax incentives could be pulled back for this kind of stuff. We do millions of dollars in tax incentives in this state. That could be used for this. The problem is this. There is no priority for this. There isn't. Or they would make it a priority. So I cry BS on that. There isn't.
Well, right. And here's the thing is the governor or maybe even the legislators, they might not understand the priority because they may not be given all of the information. They're given maybe given hogwash, the blanket statement, oh, this looks really good, but they're not being given the whole truth. That's
Well,
possible too.
Well, and that is true because Governor Stitt did create an election and ethics committee to be able to look into all the election data and the things like that. And so there was a final report that was put out about that. And it was very dissatisfying to me because it was all the same people who are involved in the system in the first place overseeing the system.
Well, I could have put out better data, not even having access to everything they had access to give a more concise report of truly giving you the truth on problems that are being seen. And that's the other thing is it's okay if there are mistakes made. Just be transparent and say, we have a process to fix them, and this is the standard operating procedure that we are going to be utilizing and pushing out and standardizing across the counties to do better. It is okay to not be perfect, but it is not okay to lie to the citizens of Oklahoma and not give them the whole truth, because not giving the whole truth is still lying.
Yeah.
Well, I agree, but that's what I was going to say is you can't subvert the reality to make it say something that you don't want to. I won't even use the word lie because that, infers that somebody's doing something illegal on purpose. But I'm just saying you can't, subvert data to color the reality. And I think when you take one piece of a pie instead of looking at the whole, then in a way you're doing that. And I just simply can't agree with that particular perspective. Well, we're at about 2 hours this morning and we've had good night. We have a huge audience this morning and it's Friday. What are you people doing?
They want to know what's going on.
I want to know what the truth, Jenny.
That's obviously
I'm a straight shooter. You ain't gonna get nothing.
But again, Amber, I do think that's why, I think that's why so many people watch when you're on is because you don't hyper in anything, you don't hyper contextualize, you don't do any of that kind of thing.
I have
so
personal experience. I can actually relate what's going on in my life, and what I've been a part of and translate it to now. And I have a perspective that also comes from living outside of Oklahoma. And that's valuable. And like I said, the gift to Oklahoma that for Terry and I is that we're not from Oklahoma. So we look at this completely different than maybe people that have been here forever and are connected with everyone.
But that makes that goes back to making my point. You can't have the same people inside the system providing oversight for the system. It simply doesn't work that way. If you really want oversight, you're going to go outside of that little bubble of people to whether it is maybe the election board should have a group of volunteers who are willing to go over that data and look at that data. That would be the best thing that any county election board could do, would be to, hey, and then if you find something, everybody could sit down and talk about it. Well, I don't know that I think that's very valid. But we don't have that. We have the same, we have the swamp. We have the same people oversighting the same people and then going, oh, well, it's 100%. Everything's lovely.
Well, and the reality is and when you have people that are sitting in positions for a long time, appointed, elected, doesn't matter, is that you do have complacency that occurs.
Yeah.
Even if it's unintentional, it happens. People get burned out. They might not be well versed in certain things. They may not have the administrative background or analytical thinking, and maybe they shouldn't have been in the spot in the first place. So,
well, and I kind of see, Maggie's point. We're just worried about the lack of care. What we see as as kind of a lack of willingness to think that we might be able to do the job better, because according to the state election board, everything's hunky-dory and 100%. So I think when rational people hear that kind of thing, they're like, no, nuh-uh, it's not. So I think that's why it's so important to have, kind of an outside looking in, and why we shouldn't make mountains out of molehills, and we should talk about things just like they are and be, specific and use our data tools and all of those kinds of things, because that's the only way I think to solve this problem.
Yes, indeed. And, as citizens, work with legislators to look at laws. And I like smaller government, not bigger government. We need to look at the laws and retract some things that might be bad, and to, to make the laws that are on the books maybe stronger, like the NCOA database.
Yeah.
It shall be funded is what it should say. The end.
Bingo. And it's like you said, and you showed, it's just absolutely ridiculous that, we can't fund $14,000. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everybody, we had a wonderful, Stephanie wants to know when you're coming back on.
Oh. Well, it'll probably happen. I'm sure of it. Usually it takes a little bit. I got more data to run. I would have to pull more stuff together to even be back on, but I know Jenny would facilitate, and Michael, if I have something to share.
Of course we will. Of
Sure.
course we will.
And capitalist sooner, Steve is right. He's right about that Social Security death index record. That's right. And in the law, it actually says that they are allowed to utilize it.
It does say that.
It does.
The full file of death information includes state death records pursuant to Section 205R of the Social Security Act. We only share the full file with certain federal and state agencies. That's from the Social Security website. So,
and our election laws do have that they are allowed to utilize that. And that's why for us, the big deal was when, for Terry and I 3 years ago, we initially came out saying, we don't need Eric. The law already states in Oklahoma that the state election board can utilize the NCOA, the Social Security death index record. There's no reason to pay an outside state agency outside of it more money than the NCOA is.
Miss MJ says U.S. citizens are more concerned than any state elected personnel. And I wish that weren't the case, but sometimes I think it seems like that. You're absolutely right. That should needs to become shall in all kinds of places. And I do think, that's important. So everybody who's been watching today, God bless you. And thanks for tuning in. We really appreciate you. And we understand that this is a concern that people, that really does sit on people's minds. So the one way to really solve the problem is this: talk to your elected representative, tell them what you've learned. Thank you, Visit. Hold on one second. Visit has something to say, so hold on one second. What you really need to do is you need to take this information and you need to go take it to your legislator, and you need to tell them, hey, look, I'm not trying to find fault here. I just want to make sure that what we're doing is the absolute best. And these things have been identified. Let's see what we can do to solve these problems. That's all you have to do. Don't scream and yell. Don't go, elections are needed. Don't. Your hair's not on fire. We'll get this taken care of, but it necessitates you talking to your elected official, bringing it to their attention, maybe sending them a copy of this. I will have a blog written up, just like I try to do for every single one. I have a blog written up, and I'll pull a couple of specific things out. I've been taking notes that Amber said, and I'll put that in there. If you'd rather not share a 2-hour video with your legislator, that's fine. You can share that blog, or you can share the clips, but you've got to do something where you're sharing it with them so that they understand your concerns, and that those concerns are founded in reality and data and not just your opinion. So let me, Plastic Girl says, thank you, girls. Maggie Arnold says, thank you. It's been very eye-opening. I'm fired up to volunteer to research and update our election laws. And you know what, Maggie? Thank you, because it's got to be you and everybody else who's paying attention. Pay attention to Maggie. Go do what Maggie does. All right. Visit wants to say, oh, and Miss MJ says, God bless you, Amber, for your persistency. Very true. And thank you for your knowledge. And Visit has this to say next Wednesday, because she knew I was going to say this. Next Wednesday, 2 survivors of sexual abuse by the Wetumpka teacher and coach give insiders' perspective about grooming. Imagine as student victims, I don't want to actually Visit. Imagine as student victims being the only ones who know your abuser is not citizen one. So Visit will be here obviously next Wednesday. So please be sure to tune in for that. We do need to protect children just like we need to protect our vote. So anything else, Amber and Michael, before we jet off of here today for the weekend?
Nope. Just want to keep encouraging people that if you've never worked polling locations and you have the ability to do so, contact your county election board secretary and get on the books to help. They're always looking for people. And by our law, we're supposed to have 1 Republican and 1 Democrat at the moment, because that's the 2 majority parties. And not every county or polling location has the proper representation.
And let's point one thing out as we close. Armchair quarterbacks never win a game. Have a great
True
weekend,
story.
everybody. We'll see you again on Wednesday at 9 a.m. in the morning, and we'll be here with Visit. So be sure to stay tuned. Have a great weekend, and we just appreciate you so very much. Bye-bye.